They say a mother's love is unconditional, but what happens when that love becomes a weapon used against you? I'm about to tell you how my own daughter tried to have me declared insane so she could steal everything I'd built, and how karma delivered justice in the most unexpected way possible. My name is Eleanor Hayes, though everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 64 years old, a former corporate financial analyst, and apparently, according to my daughter, too senile to manage my own affairs. But let me start from the beginning, because this story doesn't begin with betrayal. It begins with hope, misplaced trust, and a grandmother's foolish belief that family always comes first. 5 years ago, when my husband Richard passed away from a sudden heart attack, I thought loneliness would be my greatest enemy. I was wrong. My real enemy was sitting across from me at his funeral, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue, while mentally calculating how much money she'd inherit. That was my daughter, Vanessa. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon in late autumn. I'd been invited to my granddaughter Lily's 10th birthday celebration at an upscale bistro downtown. Vanessa had insisted on this particular restaurant, despite knowing that my contribution to her family's lifestyle made such extravagances possible. You see, after Richard died, Vanessa had convinced me that she and her husband Marcus were struggling. Real estate development was unpredictable, she'd said. They needed help with their mortgage, just temporarily, until Marcus's next big project came through. Temporarily turned into 3 years. 3 years of monthly deposits totaling over $65,000. But gratitude? That was nowhere to be found. I arrived at the restaurant wearing my favorite emerald dress and the diamond earrings Richard gave me for our 30th anniversary. I still believed in making an effort for family, even when that family saw me as nothing more than a convenient checkbook. Vanessa was already there with Marcus and their 2 daughters, Lily and Sophie. My son-in-law gave me a perfunctory nod. Vanessa offered a tight smile that never reached her eyes. She'd always been distant, even as a child, but after Richard died, that distance had frozen into something closer to contempt. The trouble started when Vanessa's younger sister Diane arrived with her family. Diane had always been the successful one, the daughter who didn't need my help because her tech executive husband provided everything. Vanessa resented her for it. "Girls, why don't you sit together over there?" Vanessa suggested to the children, gesturing toward the end of the table near me. That's when my granddaughter Lily looked at me with an expression she'd clearly learned from her mother and said, "Do we have to sit near Grandma? Mom says she's losing her mind and doesn't remember things anymore." The words sliced through me like glass. Around the table, Diane's family shifted uncomfortably. Marcus actually smirked. Vanessa took a long sip of her wine, making no effort to correct her daughter. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. My own granddaughter, coached by her mother, had publicly humiliated me by suggesting I was mentally incompetent. And my daughter found it amusing enough to let it stand without correction. I stood up slowly, carefully placing my napkin beside my untouched plate. "Well," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest, "I suppose if I'm losing my mind, I won't burden anyone with my confused presence any longer." "Mom, she didn't mean it like that," Vanessa said, but her tone was dismissive, almost bored. "Didn't she?" I asked. "Or is she simply repeating what she's heard you say at home?" The table went silent. Vanessa's smile faded, but not with embarrassment. With annoyance that I dared to challenge her in public, I gathered my purse and walked out of that restaurant with as much dignity as I could summon, leaving behind a family that clearly viewed me as a resource to exploit rather than a person deserving respect. The drive home gave me time to think, really think. 3 years of supporting Vanessa and Marcus while they lived in a house worth $800,000. 3 years of covering their shortfalls while they took luxury vacations and enrolled the girls in expensive private schools. 3 years of being treated like a senile old woman whose only value was her bank account. That night, around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from Vanessa. No apology for the humiliation. No acknowledgement of her daughter's cruelty. Just this. The mortgage payment needs to be in by tomorrow at 3 p.m. Marcus wants to confirm you processed it. I stared at that message for a long time. 2 sentences that perfectly captured our entire relationship. Not "Are you okay?" or "I'm sorry about dinner." Just a reminder that I owed them money. My response was brief. "Handle it yourself." I turned off my phone and went to bed, sleeping more peacefully than I had in months. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply no. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community, so we can bring more truthful stories for you. The next morning, I woke to 23 missed calls and 57 text messages. I made my tea, fed my 2 cats, Oliver and Beatrice, and read every panicked message while enjoying my breakfast. It's remarkable how quickly people's attitudes change when the money stops flowing. "Mom, please call me back ASAP," read one text from Vanessa. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding," read another from Marcus. "Grandma Ellie, I'm sorry for what I said," from Lily, obviously dictated by Vanessa. The mortgage payment was due by 3 p.m. that afternoon. Without my $2,300 monthly contribution, they were $900 short. I knew this because I'd been quietly tracking their finances for months, trying to understand why 2 adults with a combined income of over $95,000 needed so much help. The tea was particularly excellent that morning. Ceylon blend with honey, the expensive kind I usually reserved for special occasions. But watching my family panic over their own financial irresponsibility felt special enough. At 10 a.m., my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Vanessa's silver Mercedes in my driveway. She stood on my porch wearing yoga clothes and an expression of forced patience. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, opening the door with a pleasant smile. "You're up early." "Mom, what's going on? You didn't transfer the mortgage payment?" "No," I agreed. "I didn't." She pushed past me into my living room, clearly expecting the usual routine where I apologized for whatever had upset her and immediately fixed the problem. "The payment is due today, Mom. You know this. You've been making it for 3 years." "I have indeed," I said calmly. 36 payments, to be exact. 82,800 total. I'd calculated the exact figure the night before, and seeing her face when I said the number out loud was deeply satisfying. "We've discussed this," Vanessa said impatiently. "Marcus's business has been volatile. We needed the help." "Has it really been volatile?" I settled into my favorite armchair. "Because Marcus seemed quite confident last night. And you seemed quite comfortable letting Lily announce to everyone that I'm losing my mind." "She's 10 years old. She didn't understand what she was saying." "Really?" "Because I think she understood perfectly. Just like I now understand perfectly that you've been telling your daughters their grandmother is senile. Tell me, Vanessa, why would you do that?" Her face flushed, but not with shame. With anger that I was making this difficult. "Mom, we don't have time for this drama. I need you to transfer the money now." The sheer audacity left me breathless for a moment. No apology, no acknowledgement of the humiliation she'd put me through. Just a demand that I continue funding her lifestyle despite being publicly mocked. "Vanessa," I said slowly, "I'm going to say this once, so listen very carefully. I will never make another mortgage payment for you. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." Her mouth opened and closed silently. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious. In fact, I already called the bank this morning and informed them there would be no future transfers to your account." "Mom, you're being ridiculous. One stupid comment from a child and you're willing to destroy your own family?" "I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply closing the Bank of Eleanor permanently." The color drained from her face as reality hit her. Without my monthly payment, they couldn't afford their mortgage. Without that house, they couldn't maintain the lifestyle she'd grown addicted to. The entire house of cards was about to collapse. "We'll lose the house," she said quietly. "Then perhaps you should have thought about that before teaching your daughter that her grandmother is mentally incompetent." I stood up, signaling our conversation was over. "I have a book club meeting at 11. You'll need to figure this out on your own." She tried everything. Pleading, bargaining, even threatening to cut off my access to my granddaughters. Nothing worked, because I'd finally realized something crucial. I didn't owe her a comfortable life just because I'd given birth to her. After she left, I called my financial advisor, Patricia, and scheduled an appointment. If I was closing the Bank of Eleanor, I needed to figure out what to do with all the money I'd been wasting. That afternoon brought Marcus to my door, attempting the charm offensive. I served him coffee, listened politely to his promises of repayment, and sent him away empty-handed. That evening, Sophie called, my 8-year-old granddaughter, trying to manipulate me with tears. "Grandma Ellie, Mommy says we might have to move because you won't help us anymore." "Sweetie," I told her gently, "that's not your problem to worry about. That's your parents' responsibility to handle. But you can fix it, right? You always fix everything." The innocence in her voice almost broke me. Almost. "Sometimes, darling, adults have to fix their own problems. Your parents are capable people. They'll figure it out." As I ended the call, I wondered if they actually would figure it out, or if they'd just find new ways to manipulate me. The foreclosure notice appeared on their door 28 days later. I know because Sophie texted me a photo of it with the message, "Grandma, are you really going to let us be homeless?" I was in my garden when the message arrived, tending to my prized hydrangeas. Richard had always said I could grow anything. Apparently, those same skills applied to growing a backbone. The notice gave them 90 days to bring the mortgage current, or face eviction. 3 months to handle what they should have been managing all along. But instead of using that time productively, they launched what I came to think of as Operation Guilt Trip. It started with emotional manipulation. Vanessa left sobbing voicemails about how the children would suffer. Marcus showed up unannounced with manufactured emergencies. Even my neighbor, Helen, was recruited to mention how sad it was when families fell apart over money. "Helen," I told her over coffee on my back patio, "this has nothing to do with money. It's about respect, something that seems to be in short supply these days." Week 2 brought escalation. Lily's teacher called to express concern about the child's emotional state. Apparently, Lily had been telling everyone at school that her cruel grandmother was making her family homeless. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was diplomatic but clear. "Couldn't I find it in my heart to help my own family?" "Mrs. Patterson," I explained patiently, "Vanessa and Marcus earn a combined income of nearly $100,000 a year. They chose a house they couldn't afford and expected me to subsidize that poor choice indefinitely. I'm not making anyone homeless. I'm simply refusing to enable financial irresponsibility." Week 3 brought my younger sister Diane back into the picture, calling from Boston, where she lived her perfect life with her perfect family. Peep. "Ellie, what's gotten into you? Richard would be ashamed of this behavior." Strong. "Richard," I replied crisply, "would be ashamed of a daughter who teaches her children to mock their grandmother's mental capacity. Richard believed in dignity, Diane. Perhaps you've forgotten." But the real shock came in week 4 when my attorney called. Strong. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Robert Chen from Chen and Associates. I represent your daughter, Vanessa Hayes Morrison, in a legal matter concerning you." Strong. My heart stopped. "I beg your pardon?" Strong. "Your daughter is petitioning for conservatorship, claiming you're no longer capable of making sound financial decisions. She's provided evidence of erratic behavior and diminished mental capacity." The audacity was breathtaking. Vanessa was actually trying to have me declared legally incompetent so she could control my money and force me to resume payments. My own daughter was attempting to steal my autonomy because I dared to say no. "Mr. Chen," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding. My mental capacity is perfectly intact. In fact, it's sharper now than it's been in years. Ma'am, I'm simply informing you of the proceedings. You'll need legal representation." After hanging up, I sat in Richard's old study and actually laughed until tears streamed down my face. Vanessa had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd escalated this from a simple boundary to a full-scale war, and she had no idea who she was fighting. The next morning, I called Margaret Thornton from Thornton & Associates, the most respected family law firm in the city. They specialized in elder law and protecting seniors from financial exploitation by family members. "Mrs. Hayes," Attorney Margaret said during our consultation, "what you're describing is unfortunately common. Adult children who feel entitled to their parents' money often resort to legal intimidation when that money stops." "Can she actually have me declared incompetent?" "She can try, but she'll need medical evidence, professional evaluations, and proof of genuine mental decline. From our conversation, you're clearly competent. In fact, stopping payments to an ungrateful family demonstrates excellent judgment. What can we do?" Margaret smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "We defend you vigorously, and then we go on the offensive. Financial elder abuse is a crime, Mrs. Hayes. If she's been manipulating you while allowing her family to publicly humiliate you, we can pursue charges. I don't want to see her in prison." "Perhaps not, but the threat of prosecution tends to resolve these situations quickly." As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. Vanessa wanted to play hardball. Perfect. She'd just challenged a woman who'd spent 35 years navigating corporate financial warfare, who'd managed household budgets through 3 recessions, and who'd nursed a stubborn husband through 2 years of illness without losing her composure once. She was about to learn that some women don't become weak with age. They just get more strategic about when and how to fight back. That evening, Vanessa called. "Mom, I didn't want it to come to this, but you're forcing my hand." "Am I?" I asked sweetly. "How interesting. Tell me, Vanessa, exactly how much money do you think I have?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. If you're so concerned about my financial decisions, surely you've done your homework. How much money do you think I have?" Silence. Of course she had no idea. She'd never bothered to understand my finances beyond assuming there was an endless supply for her convenience. "We'll discuss this in court," she finally said. "Yes," I agreed. "We certainly will." The court hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in mid-December. I arrived early, wearing my best navy suit and carrying the leather briefcase that had belonged to Richard. Inside was 3 years of financial records, medical reports from my recent physical, and a psychological evaluation confirming what I already knew. I was sharper now than I'd been in a decade. Vanessa arrived with Marcus and a lawyer who looked young enough to be their son. They sat across the courtroom aisle, whispering urgently. Vanessa kept glancing at me with confusion, as if she couldn't understand how her foolproof plan had gone so wrong. The judge, Honorable Patricia Morrison, was a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the petitions with the careful attention of someone who'd seen too many families destroy themselves over money. Vanessa's lawyer went first, painting a picture of an elderly widow whose judgment had deteriorated following her husband's death. He presented evidence of my erratic financial behavior, the sudden cessation of mortgage payments, closing of joint accounts, and what he called irrational hostility toward family. "Your Honor," the young lawyer said earnestly, "Mrs. Hayes's behavior represents a dramatic departure from years of generous, loving support. This sudden change suggests cognitive decline requiring intervention." I wanted to laugh. According to their version, sanity meant unlimited financial generosity, while setting boundaries was evidence of mental illness. Then it was Margaret's turn. Your Honor. Margaret stood with quiet authority. Mrs. Hayes is here today because she committed the apparently unforgivable sin of saying no to an adult daughter who felt entitled to her money. This isn't about diminished capacity. It's about enhanced clarity. She presented my medical records first. Blood pressure excellent. Cognitive tests perfect. My doctor's written opinion that I was in remarkable health for 64. Then came my financial records, meticulously organized, showing I'd given Vanessa and Marcus over $82,000 in 3 years. Mrs. Hayes didn't stop thinking clearly, Your Honor. She started thinking clearly. She realized she was being exploited by family members who showed no respect, no gratitude, and ultimately coached a 10-year-old to publicly humiliate her grandmother. The real bombshell came when Margaret presented the recordings. Your Honor, Mrs. Hayes began documenting conversations after being threatened with conservatorship. These recordings, made legally in her own home, reveal the true nature of this relationship. The first recording played, Vanessa's voice demanding money and threatening legal action when I refused. The second captured Marcus on speakerphone with a friend, joking about how they'd have free access to the old lady's money once the conservatorship was established. The courtroom fell silent as my son-in-law's voice filled the air, discussing me like I was an ATM to exploit rather than a human being. Judge Morrison's expression darkened considerably. Miss Hayes Morrison, she said, addressing Vanessa directly, do you have anything to say about these recordings? Vanessa looked like someone who'd just realized she was standing in quicksand. Your Honor, those conversations were taken out of context. What context makes it appropriate to discuss accessing your mother's money through forced conservatorship? No answer, because there wasn't one. Judge Morrison reviewed her notes for what felt like forever before speaking. This petition for conservatorship is denied. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential elder financial abuse. The gavel fell, and with it, Vanessa's master plan crumbled into dust. Outside the courthouse, Margaret and I stood on the steps, watching Vanessa, Marcus, and their lawyer huddle in heated argument beside their car. What happens now? I asked. Now they realize they've made a catastrophic error. The DA will investigate, and they'll face possible criminal charges for financial exploitation. More importantly, they've lost any chance of accessing your money ever again. I watched my daughter gesturing frantically at her husband, clearly engaged in the kind of argument that destroys marriages. Marcus's face was red with fury, and he kept pointing in my direction as if this was somehow my fault. Do you think they'll actually file charges? That depends on what the investigation uncovers. But Mrs. Hayes, even if they don't prosecute, your daughter now understands that you're not the helpless old woman she thought you were. As we walked toward our cars, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Grandma, Mommy and Daddy are really mad. Can we come talk to you? I showed the message to Margaret, who shook her head. They're going to try to rebuild the relationship, now that legal intimidation failed. Be very careful about letting them back in without genuine change. That evening, as I sat in my garden with a glass of wine, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in 3 months. I'd gone from being a family ATM to being a woman who'd stood up in court and defended her right to dignity. The hydrangeas looked particularly beautiful that evening, and the winter sunset painted everything in shades of gold and silver. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt truly alive. But something told me Vanessa and Marcus weren't finished. Desperate people do desperate things, and losing in court had only made them more desperate. I was right to be cautious. 4 weeks after the hearing, I discovered exactly how desperate they'd become when Helen called at 7 a.m. Ellie, there's a moving truck in Vanessa's driveway. They're loading furniture. I stood at my window, watching the chaos unfold 3 houses down. Vanessa. Marcus and several helpers were loading boxes with the frantic energy of people fleeing something. My phone rang. Vanessa's number. Mom, I wanted you to hear this from me. We're moving. I can see that. Where are you going? Atlanta. Marcus has a job opportunity there. Better prospects. Strong ouch. Her voice had that false brightness she'd used since childhood when covering up trouble. Strong. How wonderful. The girls must be excited about a new adventure. Strong. About that, Mom. We think it's best if the girls stay with you temporarily, just until we get settled and find a house with good schools. Strong. I nearly dropped my phone. Excuse me? Strong. Just for a few months. We can't disrupt their education mid-year, and it would be easier if they stayed in familiar surroundings. Strong. The sheer audacity left me speechless. They were abandoning their children and expecting me to provide free childcare while they escaped the financial disaster they'd created. Strong. Vanessa, I said slowly, let me make sure I understand. You're moving to Atlanta, leaving Lily and Sophie behind and assuming I'll take care of them? It's not abandoning them, Mom. It's practical. They can finish the school year here. And who asked me if I was willing to become guardian to 2 children? Silence, because of course nobody had asked. The thing is, Vanessa continued, desperation creeping into her voice. We already told the girls. They're excited to spend time with Grandma. Through my window, I could see Lily and Sophie sitting on their front steps, looking anything but excited. They looked terrified and abandoned. Vanessa, you will not dump your children on me because you've made poor decisions. Mom, please. We don't have options. You have plenty of options. Take responsibility for your children like adults do. Take them with you to Atlanta. Find local employment. What you cannot do is make your problems my responsibility. But the girls need stability. They need parents who don't abandon them when life gets difficult. The call ended with Vanessa promising to figure something out, but through my window, nothing changed. The truck continued loading, and 2 little girls continued sitting on steps, waiting to learn their fate. An hour later, Marcus knocked on my door, attempting his version of charm. Eleanor, please be reasonable. This is what's best for everyone. Is it? Or is this what's most convenient for you and Vanessa? He tried threats next. We could just leave them. What are you going to do? Let your granddaughters fend for themselves. No, I said calmly. I'm going to call Child Protective Services and report 2 parents attempting to abandon their children. His face went white. You wouldn't. Watch me. And I did. The social worker arrived within 90 minutes. Her name was Jennifer Martinez, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She pulled up in an unmarked sedan just as Vanessa and Marcus were loading the last boxes into their truck. I watched from my living room window as Jennifer approached them on the driveway, showing her credentials and asking questions. Vanessa's face cycled through shock, anger, and then panic. Marcus tried his aggressive posture, puffing his chest and gesturing wildly. But Jennifer remained calm and professional, taking notes on her tablet. Lily and Sophie still sat on the steps, now holding small backpacks someone had hastily packed for them. My heart ached watching those 2 little girls caught in the middle of their parents' disaster. Jennifer knocked on my door 20 minutes later. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Jennifer Martinez from Child Protective Services. I understand you called regarding a potential child abandonment situation. Yes, please come in. We sat in my living room while I explained everything. The 3 years of financial support, the public humiliation, the conservatorship attempt, and now Vanessa and Marcus's plan to leave their daughters behind while they fled to Atlanta. Jennifer listened carefully, taking notes. And they asked you to take temporary custody? They didn't ask. They informed me they were leaving the girls here and expected me to handle it. Are you willing to take temporary custody while we sort this out? This was the question I'd been dreading. Every instinct screamed at me to save those girls, to bring them inside and protect them from their parents' chaos. But I'd learned something crucial over these past months. Enabling destructive behavior doesn't help anyone, especially not the children caught in the middle. No, I said quietly. I'm not willing to enable Vanessa and Marcus's abandonment of their children. If I take the girls now, their parents will simply escape to Atlanta without consequences. Those children deserve better than parents who treat them like inconvenient luggage. Jennifer nodded slowly. I understand your position, Mrs. Hayes. It's actually a healthier boundary than most grandparents set in these situations. What happens to Lily and Sophie? We have an excellent emergency foster family who specializes in sibling placements. The girls will stay together, remain in their current school, and receive counseling to help them process this trauma. Meanwhile, your daughter and son-in-law will have to make a choice. Take their children with them or face legal consequences for abandonment. Through the window, I watched Vanessa pacing beside the moving truck, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling lawyers or family members or anyone who might help her escape this mess. Jennifer stood. I need to speak with your daughter and son-in-law now. This won't be pleasant, Mrs. Hayes. Are you prepared for the fallout? I've been preparing for this moment since the day Vanessa tried to have me declared incompetent. What followed was exactly as unpleasant as Jennifer had predicted. Vanessa and Marcus were given two choices: take Lily and Sophie with them to Atlanta immediately, or surrender temporary custody to the state while they established residency and housing in Georgia. If they chose the latter, they would need to work with CPS to develop a reunification plan, demonstrating they could provide stable housing and care. Option 3, leaving the children without making arrangements, would result in immediate charges of child abandonment and potential termination of parental rights. I watched from my window as Vanessa crumbled on the driveway, sobbing into her hands. Marcus stood rigid, fists clenched, staring at my house with pure hatred in his eyes. The moving truck idled in the street, driver waiting impatiently for a decision. Jennifer spent an hour with them, explaining the legal realities. Then she spent time with Lily and Sophie, talking to them privately in their house. At 3 p.m., the decision was made. Vanessa and Marcus would leave for Atlanta as planned. Lily and Sophie would go into emergency foster care for up to 60 days, while their parents established housing and employment. Then there would be a custody evaluation to determine if reunification was appropriate. As Jennifer led the girls to her car, Lily broke away and ran toward my house. She pounded on my door, tears streaming down her 10-year-old face. "Grandma Ellie, please, don't let them take us away. We'll be good. I promise. Please." I opened the door and knelt down, taking her small hands in mine. Sophie stood behind her sister, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "Lily, sweetheart, listen to me. Your parents made choices that led to this moment. Not you, not Sophie, not me. They made choices, and now they have to fix what they broke. But I don't want to go with strangers." "I know, baby, I know. But the family you're going to stay with, they're good people who take care of children when their parents are going through hard times. You'll be together. You'll stay in your school, and you'll be safe." "Why won't you take us?" Sophie finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. This was the hardest question I'd ever had to answer. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes love means not rescuing people from the consequences of their choices? Because if I take you now, your parents won't learn the lesson they need to learn. They need to understand that children aren't things you can just leave behind when life gets difficult. They need to take responsibility for you, not expect someone else to do it for them. Vanessa started toward us, but Jennifer blocked her path, speaking firmly about not interfering with the process. I hugged both girls tightly, breathing in the strawberry scent of their shampoo, memorizing the feel of their small arms around my neck. "I love you both so much," I whispered, "and I will see you again. But right now, this is what has to happen." Jennifer gently guided them to her car. As they drove away, both girls pressed their faces to the back window, watching me stand on my porch. Vanessa screamed at me from her driveway. "You did this. You destroyed our family. Those are your granddaughters, and you just let strangers take them." I turned to face her, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "No, Vanessa. You did this when you taught Lily to mock my mental capacity. You did this when you tried to steal my autonomy through conservatorship. You did this when you chose to flee to Atlanta rather than face your responsibilities. I didn't destroy this family. I just refused to keep pretending it wasn't already broken." Marcus took a threatening step toward my property. The Jennifer returned just then, stepping between us. "Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Hayes has every right to refuse guardianship. If you threaten or harass her in any way, it will be documented and used in the custody evaluation. I suggest you get in that truck and head to Atlanta before you make this situation worse." They left 20 minutes later, their truck pulling away from the house they'd lost, leaving behind 2 daughters they'd abandoned, all while blaming everyone but themselves for the disaster they'd created. I went inside, closed all my curtains, and sat in Richard's old study. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I cried. Not for Vanessa or Marcus, but for 2 little girls who deserved so much better than the hand they'd been dealt. Oliver jumped into my lap, purring softly, while Beatrice curled at my feet. My cats had been my steadfast companions through all of this, never judging, always present. Did I do the right thing? I asked them, knowing they couldn't answer, but needing to voice the question anyway. The truth was, I didn't know. Maybe I'd saved Lily and Sophie from a lifetime of instability by forcing no parents to take responsibility. Or maybe I'd traumatized them further by refusing to provide the safety net they desperately needed. Only time would tell. That evening, Jennifer called with an update. "Mrs. Hayes, I wanted you to know that Lily and Sophie are settling in with the Foster family. They're understandably upset, but the Fosters are experienced with traumatized children. The girls will start counseling next week. Thank you for letting me know. I also want you to know that you made a difficult but appropriate choice today. What you did took courage." After we hung up, I sat in my garden despite the December chill, wrapped in Richard's old cardigan, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Heard what happened. I can't believe you let those girls go into foster care. What's wrong with you?" I didn't respond. People who hadn't lived through the past months couldn't understand the impossible positions Vanessa and Marcus had created. 3 days later, I received a call from an Atlanta number. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Detective Warren Bradford with the Atlanta Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. I need to speak with you about your daughter and son-in-law." Oh, that hurt my sake. What have they done now? "We arrested them yesterday on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. During the investigation, your name came up repeatedly in their financial records. I need to verify some information." Okay. For the next hour, Detective Bradford walked me through a nightmare I never could have imagined. Strong -pan tab. Vanessa and Marcus hadn't been struggling with Marcus's real estate development business. They'd been running an elaborate mortgage fraud scheme, using stolen identities to qualify for multiple home loans, then flipping properties without actually improving them while pocketing the loan money. And they'd used my identity as part of their operation. "Ma'am, we found multiple loan applications with your social security number, forged signatures, and fake financial statements using your accounts as collateral. They've been running this scheme for at least 4 years." I felt the room spin. "Are you saying they stole my identity?" "Extensively. They used your excellent credit score and clean financial history to qualify for loans they had no intention of repaying. Several victims thought they were doing business with you, not your daughter. Am I liable for these debts?" "No, ma'am. You're clearly a victim of identity theft. But we need your cooperation in building the case against them." After the detective hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The mortgage payments I'd been making weren't supporting Vanessa's family. They'd been funding a criminal enterprise, Every dollar I'd given them had helped them steal from innocent people. My generosity had literally financed fraud. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. The next morning, I called Margaret Thornton and scheduled an emergency meeting. Then I called Patricia, my financial advisor, and asked for a complete audit of my accounts. Margaret arrived at my house that afternoon with a briefcase full of legal documents and a grim expression. "Eleanor, this situation is more serious than we initially thought. Identity theft is a federal crime. Financial fraud at this scale could mean decades in prison for Vanessa and Marcus. What about Lily and Sophie? If both parents are incarcerated long-term, the state will seek permanent placement. As their grandmother, you'd have first consideration for custody." The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 months ago, Vanessa and Marcus had tried to dump their children on me while they fled to Atlanta. Now, they were facing prison, and the state was asking if I wanted the children they'd abandoned. But this time, the circumstances were completely different. "Margaret, I need to think about this carefully. Those girls have been through tremendous trauma. Is guardianship truly in their best interest, or am I just repeating the same enabling patterns that got us here?" Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me. "That's an excellent question. One I'd recommend you explore with a family therapist before making any decisions." Over the next week, I threw myself into documentation. Detective Bradford needed records of every financial transaction with Vanessa, every conversation about money, every text message and email that might prove I was a victim rather than a willing participant. Per Strong P, I also began therapy with Dr. Sandra Chen, a family counselor who specialized in elder financial abuse and complex family dynamics. Per Strong P, "Eleanor," Dr. Chen said during our first session, "you're dealing with multiple layers of betrayal. Your daughter didn't just steal your money. She tried to steal your autonomy, your competence, and your identity. These are profound violations of trust." End Per Strong P. I keep wondering if I missed signs earlier. If I'd been less naive, could I have prevented all of this? Per Strong P. Hindsight is always clearer than foresight. Your daughter and son-in-law are sophisticated criminals who intentionally exploited your trust. That's not your failure. That's their crime. Substrong. We spent several sessions exploring my relationship with Vanessa, trying to identify when enabling became exploitation, when love became manipulation. True, I thought, being a good mother meant always helping when she asked. I confessed. Richard used to tell me I was too soft with her, that I let her manipulate me. I thought he was being unfair. I now think he's being right. And now? Well, I mean, don't be boyfriend. What he would do that, if he wasn't primely cleaning my life to do that. I thought it was being a good mother meant always helping when she asked. I confessed. And now? Well, I now think he's being unfair. I thought he was being unfair. And well, I mean, don't be boyfriend. What he would do that, if he wasn't primely cleaning my life to do that. I now think he's being awfully unfair. And well, I now think he's being unfair. I'm pretty sure he's being unfair. And well, I now think he's being awfully unfair. Richard used to tell me I was too soft with her, that I let her manipulate me. I thought he was being unfair. And now? Well, I now think he's being unfair. I thought he was being unfair. And now? Well, I now think he's being unfair. What do you mean? Now I realize he saw something I refuse to acknowledge. Vanessa has always been willing to use people for her benefit. I just never thought she'd use me so thoroughly. Meanwhile, Lily and Sophie remained with the foster family. Jennifer sent weekly updates. The girls were adjusting, attending school regularly, participating in therapy, but they frequently asked about me. Mrs. Hayes, Jennifer said during one of our phone calls, the girls keep asking why you won't visit them. It might be beneficial for you to attend one of their therapy sessions so the counselor can help them understand your position. I agreed, and the following Tuesday, I found myself in a cheerfully decorated office with Lily, Sophie, their therapist Dr. Rebecca Mills, and Jennifer. The girls ran to me immediately, hugging me tightly. They'd only been in foster care for 2 weeks, but they both looked different, healthier somehow, less anxious. Grandma Ellie, Lily said, Mrs. Foster is really nice, but we miss you. Can we come live with you now? Dr. Mills gently intervened. Lily, remember what we talked about. Today is about understanding feelings, not making decisions about where you'll live. For the next hour, Dr. Mills helped the girls express their confusion and hurt about the situation. Why had their parents left? Why wouldn't I take them? Did this mean nobody wanted them? Girls, I said carefully, I want you to understand something very important. What happened with your parents has nothing to do with you. You are wonderful, loving, smart children who deserve parents who put you first. But you're our grandma, Sophie said softly. Grandmas are supposed to take care of us. You're right, and I am taking care of you. Just not in the way you expected. Sometimes taking care of someone means making sure they get the right kind of help, not just the easiest kind of help. Dr. Mills helped translate this concept into terms the girls could understand. Their parents needed to fix serious problems before they could be proper parents. The foster family was helping keep them safe while that happened, and I was making sure everyone got the help they needed, including myself. Are we going to live with Mommy and Daddy again? Lily asked Dr. Mills. We don't know yet, sweetie. That depends on a lot of things that adults need to figure out. As I drove home from that session, I felt emotionally exhausted, but strangely hopeful. The girls were in good hands. They were beginning to process their trauma with professional help, and I was learning to set healthy boundaries without guilt. The preliminary hearing for Vanessa and Marcus's criminal case was scheduled for January 15th. I was subpoenaed as a witness for the prosecution. Detective Bradford called to prepare me. Mrs. Hayes, the defense will likely try to argue that you were aware of their activities or that you benefited from the proceeds. We need you to remain calm and stick to the facts. Will Vanessa and Marcus be there? Yes, ma'am. This will be the first time you've seen them since they left for Atlanta. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, and colder. I arrived early with Margaret, who insisted on accompanying me for moral support. When Vanessa and Marcus were led in wearing orange jumpsuits and handcuffs, I barely recognized them. Marcus had lost weight and looked haggard. Vanessa's usual polish was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and hair that needed styling. When Vanessa saw me, her expression transformed from defeated to furious. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering urgently while pointing in my direction. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Catherine Walsh, presented the case efficiently. Multiple counts of mortgage fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming: financial records, forged documents, victim testimonies, and communications that clearly showed intentional criminal conspiracy. When I was called to testify, I walked to the witness stand on shaking legs, but with my head held high. Catherine Walsh guided me through my testimony, the mortgage payments I'd made believing I was helping family, the conservatorship attempt, the discovery that my identity had been stolen and used to commit fraud. Mrs. Hayes, Catherine said, at any point did your daughter or son-in-law tell you they were using your personal information to obtain fraudulent loans? Never. I believed I was helping them maintain their home and support my granddaughters. I had no knowledge of any criminal activity. The defense attorney, a stern man in his 50s, tried to shake my testimony during cross-examination. Mrs. Hayes, isn't it convenient that you claim ignorance now that your daughter faces serious charges? There's nothing convenient about discovering that your own child stole your identity to commit fraud. But you made substantial payments to your daughter for years. Surely you questioned where this money was going? I questioned whether they truly needed help managing their finances. I questioned whether I was enabling poor decision-making. I never questioned whether they were using my generosity to commit crimes against other people. Isn't it true that you cut off financial support out of anger over a perceived insult at a birthday dinner? This was the trap. Make me look petty and vindictive, someone who'd turn on family over hurt feelings. I stopped making payments after my granddaughter publicly announced that I was losing my mind, clearly repeating things she'd heard at home. Shortly after, my daughter attempted to have me declared legally incompetent so she could control my finances. Those aren't perceived insults. They're calculated attempts to exploit me. The defense attorney changed tactics. Mrs. Hayes, you're currently refusing to provide care for your granddaughters while their parents face these charges, correct? Is that what happened? I declined to enable my daughter and son-in-law's abandonment of their children. Yes. So, you're punishing two innocent children because you're angry at their parents? Margaret half stood from her seat, but I raised my hand slightly. I can handle this. I'm ensuring two innocent children receive proper care from trained professionals, rather than from a grandmother who's spent the past year being financially and emotionally abused by their parents. Those girls deserve stability, therapy, and a realistic assessment of whether reunification with their parents is safe. I cannot provide that. The state can. The defense attorney had no response to that. The judge, Honorable Marcus Reynolds, reviewed the evidence carefully before speaking. Based on the evidence presented, there is sufficient probable cause to bind over the defendants for trial on all counts. Bail is set at $500,000 each. Trial date is set for March 20th. Vanessa began crying loudly. Marcus sat rigid, staring straight ahead. As they were let out, Vanessa turned and locked eyes with me. "This is all your fault," she screamed. "You destroyed our family. I hate you." The bailiff moved to restrain her, but the damage was done. Vanessa's mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the entitled, manipulative person she'd always been underneath. Outside the courthouse, Catherine Walsh approached me. "Mrs. Hayes, you did excellent work in there. Your testimony was clear, credible, and completely undermined their defense strategy. What happens now?" "They'll likely try to negotiate a plea deal once they realize how strong our case is. But with the amount of money involved and the number of victims, the judge won't accept anything less than significant prison time." As I drove home, I felt an odd sense of completion. The truth was finally out. Vanessa and Marcus couldn't hide behind manipulation and lies anymore. Their criminal enterprise had collapsed, and they would face real consequences. But I also felt profound sadness. This was my daughter, the baby I'd brought into the world, nursed through childhood illnesses, celebrated with at graduations and her wedding. How had that little girl become someone capable of such calculated cruelty? Dr. Chen helped me process these conflicting emotions during our next session. "Eleanor, you're mourning the daughter you thought you had. That's a real loss, even though she's still alive. The person you believed Vanessa to be never actually existed. That's a profound grief. Will I ever stop feeling like I failed her somehow?" You didn't fail her. You gave her opportunities, education, love, and support. She chose to use those gifts to hurt people. That's her failure, not yours. Over the next 6 weeks, Vanessa and Marcus's legal situation deteriorated rapidly. More victims came forward. People who'd lost down payments on homes that didn't exist. Contractors who'd never been paid for work. Investors who'd been promised returns on fake development projects. The total damage exceeded $3.8 million. Detective Bradford kept me informed as the investigation expanded. "Mrs. Hayes, we've also discovered that your daughter and son-in-law were running a separate scheme involving fake rental properties. They'd list houses they didn't own, collect deposits and first month's rent from multiple renters, then disappear before anyone realized the property wasn't actually available. Each revelation felt like a new betrayal. How many people had Vanessa and Marcus hurt? How many families had lost their savings to my daughter's greed? In late February, Catherine Walsh called with news. Mrs. Hayes, Vanessa and Marcus have accepted a plea agreement. In exchange for pleading guilty to multiple counts and agreeing to testify against several co-conspirators, they'll receive reduced sentences. 12 years for Marcus, 10 years for Vanessa, with possibility of parole after serving 70%. What does this mean for Lily and Sophie? With both parents facing a decade in prison, the state will move forward with termination of parental rights. Given the circumstances, including the abandonment and the criminal activity that endanger the children's welfare, TPR is almost certain. Personal rights, for a language that comes with such devastating topics. Jennifer called that same afternoon. Mrs. Hayes, I need to discuss Lily and Sophie's long-term placement. With TPR proceedings starting, we need to identify permanent adoptive placement. Strong. This was the moment I'd been both anticipating and dreading. Strong. Jennifer, I need complete honesty from you. Setting aside my relationship to these girls, do you believe I'm the right placement for them? Am I capable of providing what they need? There was a long pause. Mrs. Hayes, that's one of the most self-aware questions I've ever heard from a relative in this situation. Most people just assume family placement is automatically best. I don't want to assume anything. I want to do what's actually right for Lily and Sophie, even if that means admitting I'm not the right person. Okay, here's my honest assessment. You have the financial resources, the emotional stability, and the willingness to get professional support. You've demonstrated healthy boundaries and realistic understanding of these girls' needs. Yes, I believe you could provide an excellent home for them, but it would require significant lifestyle changes and commitment, such as full-time parenting of a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, school involvement, therapy appointments, normal childhood chaos. At 64, are you truly ready for that? I thought about my quiet house, my book club meetings, my garden that required hours of attention, my freedom to travel or spend days reading without interruption. Then I thought about Lily's tears at the birthday dinner, Sophie's quiet fear in her parents' chaotic house, two little girls who'd been failed by every adult in their lives. I don't know if I'm ready, I admitted, but I know they deserve better than what they've had, and maybe that's enough to start. Then let's start the home study process and see where it leads. Over the next 8 weeks, I underwent the most thorough examination of my life I'd ever experienced. Social workers inspected my home, checking for safety issues and adequate space. I installed safety locks on cabinets, covered electrical outlets, and transformed my craft room into a bedroom suitable for a young girl. Psychologists evaluated my mental health, cognitive function, and emotional capacity to parent traumatized children. I scored well on every assessment, much to the chagrin of anyone who'd believed Vanessa's claims about my declining competence. Financial advisors reviewed my resources to ensure I could support 2 children through adulthood, including college expenses. With Richard's life insurance, my retirement accounts, and my own savings, I had more than enough. Character references were collected from friends, neighbors, my doctor, my attorney, even my book club members. Everyone spoke of my stability, kindness, and resilience. But the most important evaluations involved Lily and Sophie themselves. Dr. Nils conducted extensive sessions with the girls, assessing their feelings about potentially living with me permanently. How would you feel if Grandma Ellie became your mom? Dr. Mills asked during one session I was allowed to observe via video. Lily's response was immediate. I'd feel safe. Grandma doesn't yell about money or lie to us, and she wouldn't leave us with strangers like Mommy and Daddy did. Sophie was more hesitant. Would we still see Mommy? Probably not for a very long time, Dr. Mills said gently. Your parents are going to be away for many years. If you lived with Grandma Ellie, she would be your mom now. Forever? Sophie asked. Yes, forever. Sophie thought about this for a long moment. Okay, I think that would be good. Grandma always keeps her promises. That simple statement, Grandma always keeps her promises, broke something open inside me. These girls had lived in a world where promises meant nothing, where parents who claimed to love them had abandoned them without hesitation. I could give them something different. I could give them stability, honesty, and love without manipulation. In mid-April, the final adoption hearing was scheduled. I arrived at the courthouse wearing a lavender dress, Lily and Sophie's favorite color. Margaret came with me for legal support, but this time there was no opposition, no defense attorneys trying to discredit me, no angry daughters screaming accusations. Just me, two little girls in matching purple dresses, and a judge who would decide our future. Judge Helen Cordova was a woman in her 60s with warm eyes and a reputation for prioritizing children's welfare above all else. She reviewed the thick file of home studies, psychological evaluations, and recommendations from every professional who'd been involved in the case. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Cordova began, this court has reviewed your petition for adoption of Lily and Sophie Morrison. The circumstances that brought these children into state custody are deeply troubling. My heart pounded. Was she about to deny the adoption? However, the judge continued, the evidence clearly shows that you have provided stability, appropriate boundaries, and genuine care for these girls' best interests, even when doing so was emotionally difficult for everyone involved. She looked at Lily and Sophie, who sat between me and their CPS caseworker. Girls, do you understand what adoption means? Both nodded solemnly. It means Grandma Ellie would become your legal mother. Your last name would change to Hayes. She would make all decisions about your care, your education, your future. And this would be permanent, forever. Do you want this? Yes, Your Honor, Lily said clearly. Yes, please, Sophie added. Judge Cordova smiled. Then it is the ruling of this court that the adoption petition is granted. Effective immediately, Lily Eleanor Hayes and Sophie Margaret Hayes are the legal daughters of Eleanor Hayes. Congratulations to you all. The gavel fell, and suddenly, at 64 years old, I was a mother again. Lily and Sophie launched themselves at me, hugging me tightly while crying happy tears. I held them both, feeling the weight of responsibility and the joy of connection settling over me like a warm blanket. We celebrated that evening at their favorite pizza restaurant. Nothing fancy, just the three of us in a corner booth, planning our new life together. Can we get a dog? Sophie asked hopefully. Can we paint my room blue instead of pink? Lily added. Can we call you Mom instead of Grandma Ellie? That last question stopped me. These girls already had a mother, one who'd failed them terribly but who'd still given birth to them. What would feel right to you? I asked. They looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that siblings share. Mom Ellie, Lily suggested. Like both together? Mom Ellie, I repeated, testing it. I like that. It honors where we've been while celebrating where we're going. So that's what I became. Mom Ellie, the 64-year-old woman who'd never expected to raise children again, but who discovered that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as the hardest challenges. The transition wasn't seamless. Lily struggled with trust issues, constantly testing whether I'd abandon her like her parents had. Sophie had nightmares about being taken away. They both needed weekly therapy and struggled with feeling different from other kids whose parents weren't senior citizens. But we worked through it together. I learned to navigate elementary school politics, help with Common Core math that made no sense to me, and attend parent-teacher conferences where I was older than most of the teachers. The girls learned that consistency, honesty, and boring reliability were gifts more valuable than the exciting chaos their parents had provided. We created new traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, Thursday afternoon tea parties, monthly visits to the animal shelter where we volunteered together. I also made sure the girls maintained connection to their heritage. I created photo albums with pictures of Vanessa and Marcus from before the criminal activity, showing the girls that their parents hadn't always been bad people. They just made increasingly destructive choices. "Why did Mommy and Daddy do bad things?" Sophie asked one evening while we looked through the albums. "I don't know completely," I admitted. "Sometimes people want things so badly that they convince themselves it's okay to hurt others to get them. Your parents wanted money and a fancy lifestyle more than they wanted to be honest, good people." "Will we be like them?" Lily asked, her voice small and afraid. "No, sweetheart. You're already different. You understand that choices have consequences. You understand that honesty matters. And you're learning that real love means doing the right thing even when it's hard." 6 months after the adoption, Vanessa sent a letter from prison. It was forwarded through CPS because I'd obtained a restraining order preventing direct contact. Jennifer called to ask if I wanted to read it before deciding whether to share it with the girls. The letter was classic Vanessa, full of self-pity, blame-shifting, and manipulation. She wrote about how prison was teaching her valuable lessons, how she'd been forced into criminal activity by Marcus, how she'd always loved her daughters, but circumstances had been impossible. She asked for photos, letters, and eventual visitation rights once her sentence was reduced for good behavior. "What do you want to do with this?" Jennifer asked. "Keep it in their files. When Lily and Sophie are adults, they can read it and decide for themselves if they want contact with her. But right now, they don't need her attempting to manipulate them from prison." That's wise. Many grandparents struggle with completely cutting off the biological parents. I'm not cutting her off. I'm protecting my daughters from someone who's proven she'll use them for her own benefit. There's a difference. As the first year of our new family configuration came to a close, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed. A year ago, I'd been a widow being financially exploited by a daughter who viewed me as an ATM with a pulse. Now I was Mom Ellie, raising 2 resilient girls who were learning that family isn't about biology or obligation. It's about people who show up consistently, love without conditions, and protect fiercely. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 18 months after the adoption was finalized. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Detective Bradford. I have some news about your daughter's case." My stomach clenched. "What's happened?" "During Vanessa's incarceration, she's been cooperating with federal investigators about a much larger fraud network. Her testimony helped break open a multi-state operation involving dozens of people and over $50 million in fraudulent activity." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because in exchange for her cooperation, Vanessa's sentence has been reduced. She'll be eligible for parole in 3 years instead of 7. 3 years. That meant Lily would be 13 and Sophie would be 11 when their biological mother potentially got out of prison. Detective, does she know where we live? Does she have our contact information? Your restraining order is still active, and it will remain in place unless a judge modifies it. But, Mrs. Hayes, I wanted you to hear about the sentence reduction from me, rather than from media reports. After hanging up, I sat in my garden, processing this new development. 3 years felt simultaneously like forever and no time at all. Would Vanessa emerge from prison genuinely reformed, or would she simply be better at hiding her manipulative tendencies? That evening, I discussed it with Dr. Chen during my monthly therapy session. Yes, I'd continued therapy, recognizing that raising traumatized children while processing my own trauma required ongoing support. How do you feel about Vanessa's early release? Dr. Chen asked. Terrified, angry, worried about how it will affect the girls, I replied. All valid feelings. What specific concerns do you have? That she'll try to regain custody. That she'll manipulate Lily and Sophie. That they'll want to reconnect with her and get hurt all over again. Let's address each concern. First, legally, can she regain custody? Her parental rights were terminated. Margaret says that's almost impossible to reverse, especially given the criminal circumstances. Second, can she manipulate the girls? She'll certainly try. But Lily and Sophie are older now, wiser, and they have strong support systems. They're not the vulnerable children they were. And third, if they choose to connect with her and get hurt, this was the fear I couldn't logic away. Then I'll have to let them make that choice and be there to help them heal. Just like I had to let them go into foster care to force their parents to take responsibility. Doctor? Chen nodded approvingly. You're learning to balance protection with autonomy. That's excellent parenting. I decided not to tell Lily and Sophie about the sentence reduction yet. They were doing well in school, making friends, healing from their trauma. There was no need to introduce anxiety about something that was still years away. Instead, I focused on building our life together, creating so much stability and joy that whatever happened in the future, they'd have an unshakable foundation to stand on. That Christmas, our second as an official family, we hosted dinner for Margaret, Dr. Chen, Jennifer, and a few other people who'd supported us through the journey. As I looked around my dining room table, filled with laughter and good food and people who'd chosen to be part of our lives, I realized something profound. Family isn't about blood. It's about people who show up when things are hard, who celebrate your victories and mourn your losses, who tell you the truth even when it's difficult to hear. Vanessa had been my biological daughter, but she'd never really been family. Not in the way that mattered. These people around my table, and the two girls upstairs playing with the new puppy we'd adopted last month, yes, Sophie got her dog, they were my real family. After everyone left and the girls were in bed, I sat in Richard's old study with a glass of wine, looking at the photograph on my desk. It was from the adoption day. Me in my lavender dress, Lily and Sophie in their purple outfits, all of us grinning at the camera with genuine happiness. We did it, I whispered to Richard's picture. We survived, and we created something beautiful out of something terrible. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane, my sister who'd been so critical of my choices, but who'd gradually come to understand my decisions. Saw the Christmas photos you posted. The girls look so happy. You did good, Ellie. Richard would be proud. I typed back, thank you, that means a lot. Another text arrived, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hayes, this is Marcus Morrison. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for everything. I destroyed my family and hurt good people, including you. Please tell Lily and Sophie that their dad loves them and hopes they're happy. You don't have to respond. I stared at that message for a long time. Marcus had been sentenced 12 years and hadn't cooperated with investigators like Vanessa had, so he wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 8 years. Was this genuine remorse or another manipulation? I couldn't tell, and honestly, it didn't matter. I deleted the message without responding. Marcus had lost the right to access my family when he'd chosen crime over his children. The girls and I had worked too hard, building our new life to let the past drag us backward. As I climbed the stairs to bed, I checked on both girls, a nightly ritual I'd developed. Lily was sprawled across her bed, buried under blankets with only her dark hair visible. Sophie slept curled in a ball, clutching the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was a baby. The puppy, a golden retriever mix we'd named Honey, slept in the hallway between their rooms, our furry little guardian. I stood there, watching them breathe, these two miracles who'd come into my life through such painful circumstances, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Yes, I'd lost my daughter to her own destructive choices. Yes, I'd been betrayed, exploited, and nearly destroyed by someone I'd loved unconditionally. But I'd also gained something precious, the chance to be the parent these girls deserved, the opportunity to show them that some people keep their promises, and the joy of building a family based on genuine love rather than obligation or manipulation. Tomorrow we'd wake up and continue our normal routines: breakfast, school, homework, dinner, bedtime stories. Nothing extraordinary, just the beautiful, mundane rhythm of a stable, loving home. And that, I'd learned, was the greatest gift I could give them. Not money, not material possessions, not even protection from every possible hurt. Just consistent, honest, reliable love. The kind of love I'd tried to give Vanessa, but she'd rejected. The kind of love Lily and Sophie had been starving for their entire lives. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. 3 years passed faster than I expected. Lily was now 13, navigating middle school with the kind of confidence I never had at her age. She'd joined the debate team and discovered a talent for logical argumentation that sometimes exhausted me, but always made me proud. Sophie was 11, quieter than her sister, but no less determined. She'd found her passion in art, spending hours drawing elaborate fantasy worlds where everyone was safe and happy. Both girls were thriving in ways that seemed miraculous, given where they'd started. We'd settled into comfortable routines, punctuated by normal family challenges, arguments about phone time, negotiations about sleepovers, tears over friendship drama, celebrations of good grades and small victories. I'd learned to navigate teenage emotions, tween attitudes, and the complex social dynamics of modern childhood. At 67, I was probably the oldest active PTA member at their school, but I'd stopped caring about being the odd one out. Then, on a gray morning in March, Jennifer called. "Eleanor, I wanted to give you advance notice. Vanessa is being released next month." My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. Next month? I thought she had another year. She earned additional time off for good behavior and completing vocational training programs. She's been a model prisoner, apparently. After the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table trying to process this information. The moment I'd been dreading for 3 years had arrived. Vanessa would be free, living somewhere in the city, potentially trying to contact her daughters, who barely remembered her. That evening, I sat both girls down in our living room. Honey sensed the serious mood and lay at our feet, providing silent support. "Girls, I need to talk to you about something important. Your biological mother is being released from prison next month." Lily's face remained carefully neutral, but I saw her hands clench. Sophie's eyes widened with fear. "Is she going to take us away?" Sophie asked. "No, baby. Legally, she has no rights to you anymore. I'm your mother now, and that cannot change." "Does she know where we live?" Lily's voice was sharp, protective. "No, and she's legally prohibited from contacting us without court permission." "But she might try anyway," Lily said. It wasn't a question. She might. "That's why I'm telling you now. If she approaches you at school, in public, anywhere, you need to immediately tell a trusted adult and call me." Sophie started crying. "I don't want to see her. She left us. She chose to go to jail instead of taking care of us." I pulled her onto my lap, even though she was getting too big for it. "I know, sweetheart. And nobody is going to force you to see her. But I wanted you to be prepared in case it happens." Lily stood up, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "Why did you tell us? We were fine not thinking about her." "Because surprises are scarier than being prepared. And because I trust you both to handle difficult information." That night, both girls ended up sleeping in my room, something they hadn't done in over a year. Sophie in my bed, Lily on the floor in a sleeping bag, honey curled between them. As I lay awake listening to them breathe, I wondered if Vanessa had any idea of the fear and disruption her release was causing. 2 weeks later, Margaret called with more concerning news. Eleanor, Vanessa has petitioned the court for contact with Lily and Sophie. She's arguing that she's rehabilitated, has completed parenting classes in prison, and deserves a chance to reconnect with her daughters. Strong pause _. Can she do that? Her rights were terminated. She can file the petition, but it's extremely unlikely to succeed. However, there will be a hearing where both sides can present arguments. Strong pause _. The hearing was scheduled for April 20th, 3 weeks away. Strong. Dr. Chen helped me process my rage during our next session. Strong pause. She spent 3 years in prison, and this is the first thing she does? Try to force her way back into the girls' lives? Strong pause. Eleanor, what did you expect? Vanessa has always prioritized what she wants over what's healthy for others. Prison time doesn't automatically change fundamental character. Strong pause. Do I bring the girls to the hearing? Strong pause. C depends. Talk to Margaret about whether their testimony would be beneficial or just dramatic. Margaret and I discussed it carefully. Ultimately, we decided that Lily's voice should be heard since she was old enough to express clear preferences. Sophie, being younger and more vulnerable, would be spared the courtroom experience. The night before the hearing, Lily and I sat in her room while she picked out clothes. Mom, Ellie, what if the judge makes me see her? The judge can't make you do anything, sweetheart. The worst that could happen is supervised visitation, and even that is highly unlikely given the circumstances. What if she's different now? What if prison changed her? This was the question I'd been wrestling with myself. Then that's good for her. But it doesn't mean you owe her anything. She made choices that hurt you terribly. Whether she's changed or not, you get to decide if and when you're ready for contact. The courtroom was familiar territory now. Judge Cordova, who'd presided over the adoption, was hearing this petition as well. Vanessa sat at the petitioner's table with a public defender. She looked different, thinner, her hair graying, wearing a cheap suit that hung loosely on her frame. She kept trying to make eye contact with me, but I refused to engage. Her attorney presented the case. Vanessa had been a model prisoner, completed every available program, earned her GED, taken parenting classes, and was genuinely remorseful for her actions. She wasn't seeking custody, just the opportunity to rebuild a relationship with her daughters through supervised visits. Your Honor, the public defender said, Ms. Morrison has paid her debt to society. She's been punished for her crimes. But her daughters shouldn't be punished by being permanently separated from their biological mother. Then it was our turn. Margaret stood with quiet authority. Your Honor, this petition is premature at best and harmful at worst. Ms. Morrison's parental rights were terminated not just because of her crimes, but because she and her husband attempted to abandon these children to avoid responsibility. Margaret presented documentation. The CPS reports from when Vanessa and Marcus tried to dump the girls on me, the psychological evaluations showing the trauma the girls had suffered, and recent therapy notes indicating that both children were still processing abandonment issues. Furthermore, Margaret continued, Ms. Morrison's 3 years of so-called rehabilitation doesn't erase a lifetime of manipulation, financial abuse of her own mother, and teaching her children to mock their grandmother's mental capacity. Then Judge Cordova asked to speak with Lily directly. My daughter walked to the witness stand with her head held high. At 13, she looked so much like Vanessa. At that age, it made my heart hurt. Lily, Judge Cordova said gently, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My birth mother wants to see me, even though she gave up the right to be my parent. How do you feel about potentially visiting with her? Lily looked directly at Vanessa for the first time. I feel like she doesn't get to decide when she wants to be my mom. She wasn't there when I was scared and confused about going into foster care. She wasn't there when I had nightmares about being abandoned. She wasn't there for my 12th birthday, my first day of middle school, or when I won the debate competition last month. Vanessa was crying, but Lily's voice remained steady. Mom Ellie was there for all of that. She chose me even when it was hard. She protected me even when I didn't understand why. She's my real mom now, and I don't want to see Vanessa. The courtroom was silent. Judge Cordova asked a few more questions, then thanked Lily for her honesty. The ruling came quickly. Miss Morrison, I understand you believe you've changed during your incarceration. That may be true. However, these children have spent years healing from the trauma you caused. They've built stable, loving lives with their adoptive mother. Then their last words came from the judge. They've built stable, loving lives with their adoptive mother. Do you hear how cruel the children have been for reunification? They may petition again when both children are legal adults and can make decisions about contact without court involvement. Strong. Vanessa sobbed loudly as the judge's gavel fell. As we left the courthouse, she tried to approach us. Lily, Sophie, please. I'm your mother. I love you. Security intervened, blocking her path while we quickly walked to our car. In the back seat, Lily sat rigid and silent. I reached back and squeezed her hand. You did amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. She looked so sad, Lily whispered. She is sad, but that doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing her sadness. That night, all three of us talked for hours about the hearing, about Vanessa, about complicated feelings that didn't have easy answers. Sophie asked, "Do you think she really loves us?" "I think she loves the idea of you," I said carefully. But real love means putting the other person's needs first. Real love means showing up consistently, even when it's hard. Real love means protecting, not abandoning. Like how you love us, Lily said. Exactly like that. Over the next months, we heard nothing from Vanessa. She didn't attempt to contact us, didn't show up at the girls' school, didn't violate the court order. I hoped that meant she was finally respecting their wishes, but part of me worried she was simply planning her next move. Life continued. Lily started high school, joining the mock trial team and discovering a passion for law. Sophie entered middle school, her art becoming more sophisticated and emotionally complex. I turned 68, celebrating with a small party attended by our chosen family, Margaret, Dr. Chen, Jennifer, and a few close friends I'd made through the girls' schools and activities. To Mom Ellie, Lily toasted with her sparkling cider, the woman who proved that real family isn't about biology, it's about showing up. As I looked around at the people gathered in my living room, the girls I'd adopted, the friends who'd supported us, the professionals who'd helped us heal, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Yes, Vanessa's betrayal had nearly destroyed me. Yes, the journey to this moment had been painful and difficult, but it had also been transformative. I'd discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed. I'd learned to set boundaries without guilt. I'd built a family based on genuine love rather than obligation. And most importantly, I'd given two little girls what they deserved: a childhood where promises were kept, love was consistent, and home felt safe. That night, after everyone left and the girls were asleep, I sat in my garden under the stars. Honey lay at my feet, and Oliver and Beatrice curled on either side of me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope the girls are happy. I won't bother you again, Vanessa." I stared at that message for a long time before responding. They are happy. For their sake, I hope you find peace too. Then I blocked the number and deleted the message thread. Some stories don't have neat endings with reconciliation and forgiveness. Some stories end with healthy boundaries, protected children, and the quiet dignity of knowing you did the right thing even when it was hard. This was one of those stories. And as I sat in my garden, surrounded by the gentle sounds of my sleeping household, I realized I wouldn't change a single difficult decision I'd made. Because those decisions had led me here, to this peaceful moment, to this beautiful family, to this life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say no to people who demand your sacrifice, and yes to people who deserve your love. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, but I'd learned it well. And now I was passing that wisdom to the next generation, teaching Lily and Sophie that they never had to tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or abuse just because someone shares their DNA. Family is what you build, not what you're born into. That was the truth I'd discovered, and the legacy I'd leave to my daughters. Thanks for listening to my story. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Your voice matters, and together, we can show the world that a woman's courage can transform even the darkest betrayal into unexpected blessings.